Hey Facebook universe, welcome back to the Ashley and Danny morning show, except for the fact that Danny has aged a little bit in the past week, but actually Danny is manning the camera today, so he has one responsibility, which is to make sure that our video does not turn out to be the Blair Witch Project. But I am standing here with pretty much a legend in the firearms community. This is a former curator of the Cody Firearms Museum. He actually worked on the installation and was here when we were the Winchester Arms Museum. And he is our current Curator Emeritus of the Winchester Arms Collection and the Cody Firearms Museum. Herbert G. Houze. Thank you for volunteering. I didn't volunteer. I am.
Quite welcome.
And what we wanted to talk about today, since we have Herb here, Herb is basically my go-to guru when I find something in the museum and I don't know exactly what it is. And even when I think I know what it is, I'll talk to him about it, and he usually has an amazing story about something that I had no idea was here. And one of the things that he's pointed out to me over the years is the diversity in the Winchester collection, and specifically the former Winchester Vice President Edwin Pugsley's part of the collection. And we've had coffee several times, and he's pointed out things that belong to Edwin Pugsley that Winchester got in the, when was it?
Beginning in the late 40s and then during the 50s.
So Herb's pointed out a couple of things that I had no idea that he collected and then ended up a part of our large Winchester collection, which we talk about all the time. So we decided today's focus is on shit that Edwin Pugsley collected. And we're starting here in our Confederate case. I know we've shown it before on previous videos, but I wanted Herb to talk a little bit about Edwin Pugsley, his collecting, and how he came to get this lovely Confederate collection in a Yankee museum.
Well, when Edwin Pugsley was a budding collector, I believe he was 19 years old, saw an advertisement in the Boston Globe for a gun collection for sale. And he went to the address, and he wouldn't go in. It was a millinery shop. And being a proper young man, he did not frequent such establishments. And when it was closing, he waited there most of the afternoon, apparently. And when the lady was about to shut the door, he said, "Do you have a gun collection?" And she said yes. And he was ushered through the store into the back room, and he found a collection that had been put together by Benjamin Butler, better known as the Beast Butler, who had occupied New Orleans for the Union troops, and he bought it all. So all these Confederate-made firearms here at one time were owned by General Butler, and he had some are rather worse for wear, but most of them are in remarkably good shape for Confederate weapons. The Spillen Burr is probably one of the best conditioned ones in existence. Had both versions of the Confederate Sharps, which is quite rare. A Tarpley breech loader, of which there are only several known. And of course, when you buy a big collection, and he bought over 30 firearms, muskets and so forth, which are scattered elsewhere. But sometimes you get pieces that, yeah, are not the greatest condition. There's a very rare Cook artillery carbine made in New Orleans, which someone ruined by refinishing the stock.
True, sir. We were just looking at this, and Herb went, rare, rare, rare. Someone ruined that, rare.
We always hear about the Labatt grape shot revolver, but these are two that we know were used in Confederate service and were probably captured in New Orleans, and they've been well used.
Sorry, we're open today, so we have lots of very excited visitors here, so I was just telling.
Pugsley, most people think of Edwin Pugsley and nobody knows the name. If you love cartoons or the Addams Family, you know Pugsley. He is the little boy who's bald and fat. And if you saw a picture of Edwin Pugsley next to the cartoon Pugsley, they're one and the same. Charles Addams patterned his character Pugsley off after Edwin Pugsley. And the great scene of Pugsley, the cartoon character, shooting the crossbow is taken from a real event when Pugsley fired a crossbow in his home, and it went through the wall and into the kitchen, scaring his cook.
We just got a
fantastic.
question that said 2 Lamats, question mark, and there's actually 3 more that are not on display.
So we have
Including a carbine.
2 plus 3 is 5.
Yeah, there should be a cartridge carbine and a percussion carbine.
There you go. We have more than 2.
We have more than 2,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's impressive. And I know when we were wandering around the Smithsonian a couple weeks ago, we also have one of the later Lamat patents in the Smithsonian, but we can't show that to you right now because it's on loan. So why don't we start to walk over towards another collection of Edwin Pugsley guns. This is the one that specifically Herb and I were having coffee right after I think we appointed you
Yeah.
this Grand Master Curator Emeritus, and you want to span this way a little bit. Okay, sorry. I don't want to make sure there's no kids on camera. But no, when we were, right after we had appointed Herb as Curator Emeritus, we were having coffee and he mentioned that Edwin Pugsley had Eli Whitney Jr.'s collection. I think we've mentioned that before walking through the gallery, but honestly, I had no idea. I knew that we had a lot of the Whitney guns. I knew that it was a part of the Winchester collection, but some of this information gets kind of lost over the years, and we are always really grateful when we have people who have such great institutional memory that they know a lot about some of the inner workings of things, because Herb, you were involved in when these guns first came out in that whole process, correct?
No.
No? Oh, just kidding, I lied.
They came out in 1976, and I didn't come here until 1983.
So you got to get away with that without having to do that.
But in this case, everything from this rifle here, that rifle there, to the far end, originally belonged to Eli Whitney Jr. and was part of his personal firearms collection, chronicling the products of his company. And Pugsley purchased it all from Whitney's son-in-law, who had inherited it, and evidently kept the guns in good condition, because some of them are brand new, but had no interest in guns whatsoever. Had no interest in Eli Whitney whatsoever, other than Eli Whitney's Jr.'s daughter was rich. And that's not being nasty. I mean, he made no bones about it. He liked yachting, gambling, and women.
Don't we all?
I'm married, no, but some of we have cutaways that were made to demonstrate the actions. We have examples of Whitneys that were never made. They were just ideas. This was Eli Whitney's personal pocket pistol that he carried with him. Then we have experimentals and very early ones. But from the flintlocks made by his father, right through all the percussion arms and then various and sundry experimentals. And as you can see by these lever actions, the condition is absolutely superb.
That's always one of the things that people know when they come here is, because a lot of our stuff came from Winchester Collection and from like large collectors, our guns are usually in pretty good condition, which is always nice. And we don't show the ones that aren't as nice, unless there's something really historically significant about those.
But this little pocket pistol here was made for Eli Whitney Jr. to carry in his vest pocket.
Oh,
literally.
that's cool.
And it's the only one that was made by the Whitney Company. And his son-in-law carried it until Pugsley bought it.
Do you know when Pugsley bought it?
He started buying the Whitney material just after 1920.
Okay.
He didn't buy it all at once. He bought it as the son-in-law needed money.
Because he liked his yachts.
Yep. But, I mean, the Howard Thunderbolts are great guns. They're really rare, and these are just phenomenal.
You called them Thunderbolts?
That was the name they were called. That was their trade name.
Oh, cool.
And they're a breech loader with a lever. A deluxe one with a checkered wrist, which makes no sense at all because it was a very cheap gun.
We wanted to make it a little bit fancier. Now, Edwin Pugsley, for the people that don't know, we know he's now Pugsley from the Addams family, but he also, I think that you wrote about, he coined, or he was the one that suggested the term gun that won the West.
Winchester, the gun that won the West, 1919. He came up with the idea at some point at a meeting, and they sort of liked it, and it got put into an advertisement that was published sometime in the autumn of 1919. Now, a couple other Colt has said, you know, we used it, but there's no evidence that Colt used it before Winchester did.
Mm-hmm.
And Winchester's used it as a trademark for years. So I presume that their lawyers made sure that they had proper title to it.
So is it true? I feel like I've read that, you know, we know that the Winchester started using it in 1919, but we don't know when Colt started appropriating the term. So we can...
About 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Quote by Herb Houze.
There was a story in the Hartford Courant back, around 2005 when the Samuel Colt exhibit was at the Wadsworth Athenaeum. And they did a story about the use of that phrase. And the author was Dan Haar, H-A-A-A-R. And he tracked Colt's use of it. Mm-hmm. And was a little disappointed because it didn't go back very far.
And you worked on that exhibition, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Herb's been all over the country. I was at the Met a couple of years ago meeting with the curators, and they were bragging on Herb and all his knowledge. And so we're really grateful at the museum that he's kind of come back into the fold. And Herb is also a consultant on our renovation. We really honestly couldn't do it without him because we look at a lot of these guns and we can read about the records, we know a little bit about the history, but usually Herb knows so much more about, you know, the minutia of all the guns, and so he's laughing, but it's true, and he's someone that we go to fairly frequently, so we're really honored that he agreed to be a part of it, because I think it's nice to have someone who helped set up the first museum to help us set up the new museum.
Oh, brain is a wonderful thing to waste.
Yes.
But, I mean, Pugsley also, he just purchased whatever he could find. And he usually bought good examples of what was available. Not all the time, but sometimes he got some really phenomenal pieces.
And sometimes he got not real pieces.
Sometimes he got not real pieces. Yeah, there's a gun that's in storage. It's a flintlock revolver, supposedly from roughly 1700, except it was probably made about 1910, and acid aged, and all the screws are machine screws, which means it has to be essentially late 19th century, early 20th century, because in 1700 they made handmade screws.
Thanks, Edwin Pugsley.
No, but it's, you know,
it's a part of the story.
It's cute to have stuff like that.
Oh no, I love stuff like that, and I would love to at some point have like a little small satellite exhibit on things that are fakes and forgeries, because it's really fascinating. We did?
Back in 1986 for our summer exhibit. It was fakes from all the collections.
Oh, that's cool.
And the firearms, the art, Buffalo Bill. No, there was nothing from the Plains Indian because George Horsecap here said nothing's fake. But yeah, we had all sorts of stuff.
It's really an interesting part of the history. And before we wrap up today,
there's one more thing. We were talking about the Confederate weapons from Butler.
Yeah. That we're walking this way.
Probably the best thing that he bought, one doesn't think of Confederate military arms, but in that collection that he bought were these Erickson Derringers. And we've never figured out who McNider was. But those are, you know, some of the handguns that he bought at that time.
Wow.
And it's a fantastic pair of Texas-made Derringers.
Amongst all of the Derringers that we have. Derringer and Derringer style Derringers. But I wanted to, I know it's not Pugsley related, But Herb told me a great story about the Thompson that's behind us. So can we, before we wrap up, can you tell the story about this Thompson? Because it's not in our labels, but it's a really interesting story.
Tom Henshaw, who was a salesman, designer, man about town, Winchester historian for Olin Corporation, told me the story that this Thompson came to the collection from the New York City Police Department. It was given to the company in the early 30s. It had been dropped by a bank robber as he was leaving a bank in New York City, and the gun jammed. And he just dropped it and took off. And we actually fired it, and it jams on the 4th round.
We don't fire them anymore, but that is an interesting part of our history because the guns used to be fired in the collection. It used to be an acceptable museum practice to do that.
We are under authorization from Olin Corporation to demonstrate our automatic arms for the local police, Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Department, and Cody Police Department. And they would send us ammunition, and we would go up to the range and familiarize them with some of the more esoteric guns that we had. The Villa Perosa twin barrel submachine gun.
We saw that a couple weeks ago.
The Thompson here, BAR, the Johnson automatic rifles, our AKs at the time. And the police department was quite pleased with it because they got to handle stuff they never handle anywhere else.
So I just get to be jealous when I talk about some of the guns that I like, and Herb's like, yeah, that one fired really well, because I don't know what that's like with our collection today.
Probably the most interesting one was a 50 caliber anti-tank rifle, which was recoilless. And everybody went and, you fire it. No, you fire it. And our local sergeant at the time finally said, I'll do it, sat down and fired it. Got up and goes, well, I kicked like about a 30-06. It was recoilless.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
It's a huge gun.
So we've got an honest-to-goodness bank robbery Thompson in the collection.
From the age of the Prohibition.
And so one of the things we've talked about a lot in our videos is that we want to be able to bring those stories out in the new museum. We want to be able to display a lot of guns because that's something that gun enthusiasts, gun collectors want to see. And I believe if you have it, show it. But we need to find a way in the new museum to better tell those stories so that they don't get lost in the pages of history. But I just want to thank you, Herb, for coming on. He didn't know he was going to do this today, so we're really grateful that he agreed. We didn't have to, force him or anything. But thank you so much, Herb. He's going to be around a lot more this year since we're redesigning. We're doing the final stage of design throughout now and the end of the year. So stay tuned for updates on that. And if you want to check us out, you know where to find us. If you have any more questions for Herb or I, you know where to ask them. You can ask them afterwards, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.